All right, well, we are continuing our Total Fitness series, and the whole point of this series is us asking the question, does God really care about our fitness, our complete fitness? And the answer is yes. Yes, God God cares about all of you, every aspect of you. In our verse for this series, we're going to go ahead and start with it. I'm just going to read it and you listen. Last week we tried to read it together, and I just don't read well with others. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and then we'll get going. So go ahead and click it up, the first verse. Hopefully, is it? Oh, it's up there. It's just not back there. That's mean. All right, well, I'll turn around and look at it. So here we go. From 1 Corinthians 16, 19, 20. Don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself. For God bought you with a high price, so you must honor your body you must honor God with your body. Whew. You know, reading in school, paying attention, it's important. Do it young, because I didn't start reading until like college, and I struggled. Anyway, so that's our theme verse. Your body is not your own. God bought your body with a price, and He wants you to be physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually healthy. So tonight, as you may or may not have guessed, we're going to be talking about emotional health. All right, being emotionally fit. Now, guys, I know some of you at this point have just turned me off because you're like, emotions? Are you going to cry, Jack? Is that what we're going to do? We're going to have a moment where we just all kind of hunker down and let some tears out? No, you all have emotions, whether you like it or not. No matter how much you suppress your emotions, we all have them, and we have them for a reason. So I want to go ahead and do a quick highlight of the 5 emotions that we are going to talk about. So I have a short video that's going to do that for us.
Ever wonder why you feel the way you do? Well, get to know your emotions. Sometimes life gets a little dirty. That's when disgust takes over. This is disgust. Whether advising on your social life or on life's little messes, disgust is there to, well, hold on. When the unexpected is staring you in the face, fear is there to keep you safe. With speed and wisdom, fear assesses the situation and settles your nerves in his own special way. He's got this. Thank you, fear. When things go wrong, anger is there. This is anger. He will make sure the world knows anger is in control. But what you really need to watch out for is when he's out of control. When life gets you down, that's when sadness takes over. This is sadness. With a caring touch and a kind heart, sadness leaps into action to let you... I said sadness leaps into action. Sadness? Oh, sadness. When everything in your life is going your way, that's when joy takes control. This is joy. With an unstoppable spirit and unbeatable energy, joy brings a smile to your face and, oh, who cares? Let's party! Get to know all your emotions with Disney Pixar's Inside Out, rated PG.
Yes. No, we're going to be talking about those 5 emotions. Now, just so you know, if you really research it, a lot of people say, there's a lot of people who have, there's different emotions, there's more emotions. We're going to focus on 5 because it fit into my video. We're going to focus on 5 because really I feel like these 5 emotions that we have are very important to what we're doing in our walk with Christ. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, like, really? Jack, you showed a Pixar film, we're talking about our emotions. Is this really important? Yes. It is absolutely critical to how you affect the world around you by how you deal with your emotions. And to really illustrate that point, we're going to go through 2 stories in the Bible. It's the same person, and it's a pretty popular story. Even though it is popular, I'm still going to read it to you because I need practice, and we need to hear it again. So we're going to be talking about a guy named David. Most of you probably know about David from the Bible. Okay, we're going to highlight probably his most famous story, starting in 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now, just so you know, we're not going to read straight through the whole story because it has a lot of extra stuff that's really cool but takes a long time. So I'm going to be skipping around through it. But if you really want to read the full story for its completeness, I encourage you to go look 1 Samuel 17, whole chapter. All right? So we have David. This guy, we're going to get introduced to him a little bit, but before we get going, this is a time of war in the Old Testament, right? Almost every time you look at the Old Testament, it's a time of battle and of war and things of that nature. But this particular war is with the Philistines, okay? And they are the big bad people who are really trying to take on the Israelites. All right, so we're going to start verse 1, chapter 17, okay? So here we go. I'm just going to trust that it's going on behind me because it's not on that side. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle. They were gathered at Sakha, which belonged to Judea. They set up their tents between Sakha and Azekah. I just want you to know the pronunciations of these guys. Anyway, and that's in Ephraim's. So Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and set up their tents in the valley of Elah. All right, they came up dressed for battle to fight against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, while Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with the valley in between them. Then a strong fighter came out from the armies of the Philistines. His name was Goliath. Spoiler alert, right? His name was Goliath from Gath. He was almost twice as tall as most men. Okay, so setting the scene through all those fancy words, you basically have hill over here Israelites, hill over here Philistines, and there's a valley in the middle. It's probably a little babbling brook too. It's probably pretty picturesque. But anyway, so there's this space in the middle and the two armies on the side. Now, it was common practice during this day to send out your best warrior. And both sides would send out their best warrior, and then you would duke it out, and whoever won, they would say, all right, you win the battle, and that way you only lost one guy as opposed to a bunch, all right? So normally this is how it worked, but we have this moment whenever their champion steps out, all right? Their champion steps out, and they look across, and they're like, oh, man, holy Sakoth, look at that guy, he's huge, all right? And so they experience an emotion we already talked about a little bit. They experience fear, all right? They look over, they see this guy, he is dangerous, he is big. Then actually in the rest of the verses I skipped there, they go into his armor that weighed like a bajillion pounds. It wasn't a bajillion, but it was heavy, and he was massive, okay? So every morning, Goliath would come and he would do the same thing, all right? And then we go on to verse 8. He says this, Goliath stood and called out to the army of Israel, saying, so it's like, the morning's rise, this beautiful day, and then here he goes. He's going to talk. Why, I'm assuming he talks like this, why have you come out dressed for battle? Because that's how they talk back then, right? I can't read. Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Come, choose a man for yourself, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I fight him and kill him, then you must become our servants and work for us. Again, the Philistine said, I stand against the army of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all the Israelites heard these words from the Philistine, they were troubled and very afraid. All right, so every morning, this is what kind of happens. He gets up, he comes out, blah, 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 and everyone's like, oh, and they don't do nothing. All right, that's the basic, this is the routine, all right? So it's going to verse 12, it says, now David was the son of Jesse, an Ephraite, of Bethlehem in Judea. Jesse had 8 sons and was old in the days of Saul. He had lived many years. I guess it's kind of redundant. He was old and he lived many years. Anyway, so Jesus, Lord Jesus, we're just going to take a moment. Help me read. In your name, Lord Jesus, I pray. Amen. That was a serious prayer, not a joke. Okay, so 13, Jesus. Dang it. Jesus' name is powerful, and I want you to hear it. But Jesse was the father of David. Whew. So anyway, Picking back up. Jesse, 3 older sons, had followed Saul in the battle. So the older brothers went off to battle, the older 3. Their names were Eliab, the firstborn. Next was Abinadab. And the third was Shammah. He was a suave one. Anyway, so David was the youngest. Evidently, all the other brothers, it doesn't really matter, okay? So those 3 are off at war. David was the youngest. Now, when you're the youngest, how many of you are the youngest in your family? Right? Now, if you're the youngest of a lot, like if there's a big gap between you and the siblings, you are like the prize child, you don't have to do much. But if there's not a big gap, you're the do boy, right? You're the one who gets to, they're like, oh, you do that. I'll just let him do it. So this is David. He's watching sheep because that was the lowest thing you had on the totem pole. And so he's out there watching sheep, all right? And he didn't get to go off to battle, which I'm sure he was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. So he's at home watching sheep. And then one day his dad comes up to him and he says, hey, Gopher, or hey, Duboy, hey, David, my youngest son, I want you to take some bread and cheese out to the battlefield because nothing gets you ready for a fight like bread and cheese, okay? The options weren't great back then. So he gives them this stuff. He says, take it to your brothers and report back to me, like, are they alive and how's it going? So David does this. So in verse 22, it says, David left the things with the man. So he brought him up there. Good boy. He brought him to take care of. Then he ran to the army and he went to see his brothers. As he talked with them, Goliath the Philistine from Gath came out out of the army of the Philistines and spoke the same words as he has before. And David heard him. So David's like, hey, bros, what's happening? What's up? And then you hear, all right, come out and fight me. And he goes through the whole spiel. He says, I defy you, blah, 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 blah. And probably at this point, like in the middle of David's sentence, like everyone starts like, oh, he's out again. Oh, is it that time already? All right. So they're sitting there, he's talking, and David hears it, okay? Now, suddenly David is filled with emotion, all right? That through hearing what Goliath had to say, he's filled with many emotions, okay? He's saddened at first. The first thing, he's saddened because the fact of he's sitting there, he's talking with his bros, like literally his bros. I guess he may know some other people and called them bros. I don't know. But he's talking with bros, and this guy comes out, and suddenly everyone is terrified. Everyone on his team is terrified. So, you look at this, okay, this is kind of a sad moment. Then you also think about he's probably disgusted because of the words of Goliath. Goliath is out there basically mocking his God, mocking the God of the universe. And that disgust leads to anger. He gets angry because of the words that are being said, okay? And his emotions are made evident in verse 26. It says, then David said to the men standing by him, might as well say trembling by him, he said, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away Israel's shame? For who is this Philistine who has not gone through the religious act of the Jews? Who is he that he should make fun of the armies of the living God? He hears these words and it plays on his emotions. It hits him hard. He's disgusted, he's saddened, he's upset, he's angry. All right? And what you're going to realize, or what we're going to see, is that all of these emotions, what they do is they lead him to take action. All right? He leads him to take action. So David goes and he sees the king. All right? And he goes up and he tells the king, he says, I'm going to take him on. All right? He said, I'm going to take him on. And they're like, dude, you're small. And that's it's basically what they say. We're skipping some in here. And they're like, you're little, you're whatever. And he's like, this right here, it says 32. David said to Saul, he said, let no man's heart become weak because of him being Goliath. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. Now, David is not he's not an emotional wreck. He's not being impulsive. He's not sitting there going just like, oh, I'm mad, I'm going to go punch a wall or something. Because some of us are like that. Like, oh, I just want to throw something. That's not what's going on here. He has experienced what he's seen. He's angry. He's filled with all this emotion, and he goes, okay, I'm going to do something about it. All right? So why would David go fight Goliath? We have all these emotions, but another one we haven't talked about yet is David's fear. And not David's fear of Goliath. We're talking about David's fear of God. Now you may be going, okay, fearing God, wait, he's mad because he's making fun of God. I'm not talking about like he goes, God, He goes, okay, he respects God and he knows God. He spends a lot of time with God. He knows the power of God. He knows that God will not let words spoke against him go down like that. He also knows that God's not going to sit there and look favorably upon a group of people who claim to live by his power and claim that he is the strongest. So the Israelites are doing something wrong by not trusting God. He knows to fear God in God's power. Okay, he knows that his people don't believe that God can defeat this person. He knows that they don't believe that. And he knows the fear of the Lord. The Bible talks about in a different spot, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. He understands God's power and he puts it in proper respect. So that's another emotion. This is a full emotion event here. So David steps up. All right? In the next verse it says, and David said, the Lord who saved me from the foot of the lion and from the foot of the bear will save me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said, go for it. No, he said, go and may the Lord be with you. David took care of the sheep. That was not a safe job. A lot of animals like eating sheep, like pretty much any carnivore, because sheep are so dumb. Sheep, is it plural already? Yeah, it's plural. Thank you. In the back. The sheep are dumb, and a lot of animals love to eat the nice, juicy lamb chops. So he's had to fight off bears. He's had to fight off lions, and he realizes that it wasn't him doing it. It was God doing it through him. So what he does, and this is like an awesome part, so I included it all. So this is the triumphant thing here. Verse 41. The Philistine came near to David. Now, he's filled with this emotion. He's centered in on God, and here we go. He says, the Philistine came near to David with the man carrying his shield in front of him. All right? When the Philistine looked and saw David, he thought nothing of him, for he was only a young man with good colored skin and was good looking. Okay, just stopping right here for a second. So he looks at him, he's like, man, this guy could be on the cover of GQ. Pfft. What? I mean, David is small. He's like a, like one of the One Direction kids. He's small. He's a good looking little kid, and he's like, oh, what? You come to me with, One Direction? No, you come with me with Zayn. Anyway, no, he sits. Yeah, some of y'all are like looking at me mad, like I just referenced One Direction. Come on, I referenced him to David. He wins. Spoiler alert. Anyway, so he doesn't think much of him. The Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine spoke against David by his gods, a.k.a. making fun of God. Then the Philistine said to David, "Come to me. I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the animals of the field." Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of all, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have stood against. This day the Lord will give you into my hands. I will knock you down and I will cut off your head. This day I will give the dead body of the armies of the Philistines to the birds of the sky and the wild animals of the earth. Then all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel." Woo! Right? I mean, strong words. Nothing's gone down yet, but strong words. All right? So then we go, verse 47. It says, all these people gathered here may know, all these people gathered here may know the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and and he will give you into our hands. Then the Philistine rose up, because I guess he was sitting, and came to meet David. And David rushed to the center of the valley to meet the Philistine. Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking like, something, if you've seen like any battle movie at all, they're sitting there, they get done, words are done, it's time to go. And this is when the music kicks up, boom, 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 and you're like, ah, and they're coming in, right? And this is, David probably is coming in a little more whatever, and the other guy's probably like, whatever. All right? So they're coming in towards each other. David put his hand into his bag, took out a stone, and threw it. AKA, he actually had a sling, so he wasn't like, ah! All right? He had a sling, so he takes it, he reaches in, he takes it. All right, so that's my sound effects. All right. And so he throws it. and it hit the Philistine on the forehead. The stone went into the forehead, so they fell on his face to the ground. All right? And then after that, just to kind of finish off this nice gory tale, because the Bible's awesome, he doesn't have a sword. He didn't go into the battle with a sword, so he takes Goliath's sword and goes on and cuts off his head. And everyone on the Philistine side was like, ah! All right? They bolt. They're out. They are off for the races. David didn't go into this fight, didn't go into this whole issue like an emotionless robot. I've met many a guy and some girls that are like, oh, I'm not ruled by my emotions. I don't have any emotions. You know, I'm just blank face all the time, right? And some of you just got a picture of somebody in your head that's all about that, right? He went into this filled with his emotions that God gave him, okay? He gave him these emotions to be used in the right way to bring about his glory. You know, and in the end, I'm sure he was filled with joy because we didn't cover that one in there, right? Yeah, happy. Anyway, so we have that. Now, sadly, just as these emotions can cause you to do great things, they can also cause you to do horrible things. On down the road, we're going to skip on to the rest of David has another really famous story that I'm going to somewhat paraphrase. We're going to read about 3 verses. I'm going to tell you the rest, okay? So David's king at this point. So fast forward a good number of years. Saul's no longer there. David's now the king. And he's kind of got a little high and mighty. He's got a little cocky in his position. And so here we go. Starting, this is 2 Samuel chapter 11 if you're interested in reading the whole story. It's pretty intense. So I'm going to give us the short version. The spring of the year was the time when the kings went out to battle. At that time, David sent Joab and his servants and all of Israel. They destroyed the sons of Ammon and gathered the armies around Rabbah. But David stayed in Jerusalem. Okay? So we have a point. David's fear of the Lord has waned. His respect of God, his fear of God has kind of subsided because where he's supposed to be is out at war. What God says, you need to be leading your people in the battle. I put you in that position, and he's not doing it. So he's kind of kicking back. He's not really following God at this moment, okay? When we stop following God, when we stop listening to God, our emotions start taking us places that we're not supposed to go. They're powerful, and they need to be guided, and this is what happens. So he has this kind of relaxing of his fear of God, and then he moves into also that the joy he started receiving, the happiness that he's really receiving, is no longer, he's not getting it from God. He's getting it from things that make him feel good. He's getting it from things that give him pleasure. So his motivation for his joy has switched from God to himself. With that thought, verse 2. When the evening came, David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of the king's house because there wasn't any Walking Dead or anything, so he had nothing to watch. All right? So he gets up, he walks around the roof of the house. From the roof, he saw a woman washing herself. She's taking a bath on the roof. That was common. That's what they did. All right? Taking a bath on the roof. The woman was very beautiful, so David sent someone to ask about the woman. All right? Someone goes off, someone comes back, and one said, "Is that not Elam's daughter Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, the Hittite? Anyway, is that not Uriah's wife?" That's basically what they say. They go, "Oh yeah, we know who that is. That's Uriah's wife. That's one of your awesome warriors. That's one of your soldiers. So one of those people off fighting battle while you're here. That's his wife." Okay. So David, being filled with emotion again, in some aspects, he sees her and he says, "I want her. I want her to come and hang out and for us to do marital things." That's what he says, okay? He looks at the situation and he's going, the joy I can get from doing something that I want to do. So his center's no longer God, it's himself. And then this emotion starts creeping up. And also another emotion kind of disappears, kind of like the whole emotion of fearing God. That's waned, and also like his disgust factor. You know, we talk about disgust up here. Like the idea of taking advantage of someone else's spouse is a disgusting thought whenever you're focused on Christ. That is like, no, there's no way I would do that. But where is David focused? He's not focused on God. He's not focused there, so that starts going away. All right? So he sends someone to go get her. All right? And lo and behold, after they hang out for a night, they find out that she's going to have a baby. All right? So they have this moment, and so some more emotions are starting to kick in. All right? A different fear is about to kick in. For David, now he's scared that someone's going to find out that he was doing something with this person who was not his wife. In fact, he's so scared that he decides to come up with a plan. He comes up with a plan to say, all right, Uriah, we're going to call him in, and we're going to invite him home so he can spend time with his wife so he thinks the child is his. But Uriah's so awesome. Okay, he comes home and David's like, "Hey, welcome home. Hey, go on home." And he's like, "No, I'm going to sleep on the steps of the palace because all the men are off at war. How could I even think of going home and enjoying a meal and all that jazz whenever everyone else is off at war?" So David, as you can imagine, gets angry. Okay, he gets a little bit angry. All right, and the next night he tries again. He tries even to get him drunk. And even in drunkenness, Uriah says, no way, I'm not defying God. I'm not defying what I'm supposed to be doing. I'll sleep outside. As you can imagine, David gets more angry. In fact, he gets so angry that he sends him back to the front lines with a note. He says, "Hey, this is for your leader." So he sends him back the note, and the note says, "Whenever Uriah is in battle, put him at the part that is the most dangerous, and then pull out everyone else except for Uriah." So basically, what does he do? He says, kill him. He gets so angry, he says, take his life. Now, I know we look at that and we go, man, come on, this is a guy who slayed giants, right? This is a guy who actually did a lot of really awesome stuff. Reading David's story, it's long, but it's so good. He's done so much good stuff. But when he gets his focus off of Christ, it changes the direction of his actions. It changes his emotions. If I went through the Bible and talked about all the emotion they talk about probably the most in the Bible is anger, right? It's anger because how many of you got angry in the past month? Anybody? If you didn't get angry, good on you. Good on you. Either you're not paying attention or you really got some self-control, and I'm proud of the second one. All right, so there's tons of verses on that. There's tons of verses in the Bible about you looking at going, okay, you got to have your emotions under control, but it doesn't mean we suppress them. Our emotions, like most everything else, was given to us for good. It was given to us for a great purpose. Every bit of it. Emotion of fear, disgust, joy, anger, sadness, they all are an important key part of your life. Each one of them does something different. If you look at fear in your life, fear often is something that keeps you from doing something that's dangerous. That's probably a good thing, right? Most of you, how many of you have ever done something stupid and hurt yourself, right? I mean, I think we probably could all share at least one story. I had a friend of mine who was on a mission trip in Jamaica, and they had these outdoor toilets basically, and you could get up on them and you could jump from one to the other to this bank. Bless you. Now, I was not on the trip. I can go ahead and tell you, I'm a big old chicken. So fear, I wouldn't be up there anyway. But she's like, someone said, "Oh, I bet you won't," and I bet you I will. And she got up, and in Jamaica, she climbed up on top of a toilet of an outhouse, and she goes and she's going to jump from this one to that one to the bank. And so she jumps from this one, and when she lands on this one, getting ready for her next jump, it was slippery. She fell and broke her arm in Jamaica. She got to go and visit a very rural, there we go, a rural hospital, and end up actually, because it wasn't the best care. She ended up having to get it reset when she got back to the United States, which means they had to break it again and put it back together. There's a moment where fear is a good thing, right? God gives it to us. Sadness is a good thing. How many of you love being sad? Really? Yeah, okay, there we go. You know what? Some people love being sad. Most of us hate it. How many of you hate crying? Are you any of you hate crying? My wife hates crying. I cry a lot. I'm not going to do it right now. I made almost a sound like I'm going to cry. I'm not. But I cry all the time. It's usually like a 1-to-5 ratio. The amount of times I cry or the amount of times my wife cries compared to me. I'll see like a Johnson & Johnson's tissue commercial, and I'm just like, oh, God. They found him at the end. Where's the tissue? All right. I'm that way. But you know what? Sadness is important. God gave you sadness so you can look at sometimes sadness as a way of bringing you around to going, okay, that was a bad result, and I don't want that to happen again, so I'm going to avoid it. Sometimes sadness is how you deal with things. Whenever we experience loss or something like that, if you never go through sadness, then you're never going to be able to move on. You're going to get stuck right there, all right? And we could go through each one. Disgust. Name some foods that disgust you. Go. Peanut butter. What? Peanut butter. Wow, broccoli pizza, okay. All right. You know what disgusts me the most? Listen up. The food that disgusts me the most, that I've actually eaten, not like crazy food. No. I love chicken fingers. No. It is steamed carrots. Worse for me. My daughter loves carrots. I don't know what's wrong with her. We all have something that disgusts us, right? When you get disgusted, generally that helps you to move away from something, right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you need to eat your vegetables, right? But in other aspects of your life, you see some behavior some people are doing that disgust you. You know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay away from that. You see some actions, maybe some people are cheating, things of that nature, and you go, well, you know what? That disgusts me. It's going to keep you from it. It's important, all right? Joy is important too. How many of you love to live in Joyland like all the time, right? And some of us pretend all the time that we're always happy. You know those people that they're always happy. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, no one's always happy. But listen up. Our joy, we see what God's doing. We see things that are good, things that benefit us well, things that we go, okay, that's awesome. And then we know to return back to those things. We see what God does in life. Okay, I'm going to return back to God, and I'm going to return back to making sure I focus on Him because of the joy it gives, right? And I'm skipping one. Which one am I skipping? If I got all 5? Anger. Anger is one. I don't think I actually talked with this, but anger is a very important. Anger, right? Anger is actually a really important one. It's really important. And the reason I say this is because it's really important because anger moves you to action, right? Now, it can move you to bad action, right? Someone calls you a name and you're like, you get angry, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to go over and I'm going to, think bad thoughts because I'm not violent. No, you may go over and be like, I'm going to punch you, or I'm going to go talk aggressively with you. Anger, it's anger that takes us, listen up, it's anger that takes us from not doing something to doing something. Jesus got angry. It's not a sin to get angry. Jesus comes into the temple, all right, and he sees all these people selling these sacrifices, but they're ripping people off, basically. They're changing money out. They're ripping all these people off, and they're in God's house. They're in basically the equivalent of the church back then. They're in the church building, and they're doing this. And he comes in, and Jesus is moved because of his anger to flip some tables. And he runs them out. He actually grabs like some cords, and he's like, get out of here, whoosh, right? And he runs them out. Anger can make you to do great things. Anger, you may look at someone going, okay, you're making fun of so-and-so in class. I'm going to go stand up for him because you know what? That's not right. Anger, you may look at and see one of those commercials about like World Vision where you see a child who's hungry, and you go, you know what? That's just not right. I'm going to do something about it. Anger can be used for good. all of these can be used for good, but here's the main point. When God is the central focus, your emotions are going to be used for good. Your emotions are going to benefit you when God is at the center. If you want to have an you want to be emotionally healthy, God has to be absolutely most important. Because otherwise, any other angle you come at your emotions aren't going to work well. They're not going to, it's kind of like electricity. How many of you ever been shocked before? Right? Shocked? Yeah. Whenever I worked at college, I was a maintenance man for a little while, and I was fixing a light. And I cut the power off to the light, and I was working on it. And then I went to get a sandwich. And I came back to continue working on the light. And what I didn't know was that someone decided to cut the breaker back on while I was gone. I climbed up a metal ladder, and I go up, and I have my screwdriver, and I'm like, and it goes, pow, and it knocks me off the ladder. Is electricity bad? No. Electricity, within the right confines, is good. Your emotions, being in the right confines, is a good thing. Your sadness, your anger, your joy, your disgust, your fear, they're good within the confines of being centered on God. So here's what I want to leave you with today. There's probably two groups of you out there. There's a group of you who are in touch with your emotions, and there's a group of you who are not. Okay, and you know who you are. What I want you to do, either group, what I want you to think about is, when was the last time that I got angry for something that was for God? When was the last time that my joy came from God? When was the last time that something I was afraid of, or something that was a fear that brought up that was of God? When was the last time I was disgusted by something because of my relationship with Christ? If we really want to be emotionally healthy, we have to look at it and go, okay, God, are you center in all of this? So that's what I want you to think about. Will you pray with me? Father God, you are awesome, you are amazing, and we love you, and we adore you, and we thank you for making us the way we are. God, I pray that you help us with our emotions. God, I pray that you help us to realize that not only do we have them, God, but you've given them to us for a reason. That we're supposed to be sad sometimes for you to help us to get through something. We're supposed to be joyous sometimes and being happy in what you have done. We need to be fearful sometimes to know that we need to be safe. God, sometimes we need to be angry, we need to be disgusted so that we are moved to action for you. God, I pray that as we enter in this last song, as we get ready to go, that we spend this time worshiping you.